I got this white linen fabric from a scraps box from Fabric Wholesale Direct, and I'm going to make this linen top that you'll see in the top left corner. I made this flannel top from an existing shirt, and I had followed an upcycle from Fashion Wizardry, so I'm taking that shape sort of, since it's similar to the linen top, and then I'm just using a basic t-shirt whose sleeves fit me comfortably. So the first step is just to lay out your fabric in an easy, manageable manner. And then I am using yellow tailor's chalk because I want it to be something that's easier to get rid of instead of like red or blue, but unfortunately that means it's harder for you to see what I'm doing, but I'm basically chalking an outline of this existing crop shirt that has a very similar style to what I'm trying to make. It's really pretty easy to make patterns from your own clothes. It's just how you fold those tops and making sure that you give yourself enough seam allowance and error room, really. When I cut an extra like inch or so because I want to make sure I don't short myself, make a grave mistake, you know. You see the sleeve, I want it to be longer than this t-shirt, so once I do that, yep, it's like 3 inches longer than the sleeve. I gave you a piece side because I want you to know that it's 2 sleeves that you need to cut. I didn't quite remember how much fabric I needed to use on that gathered bit on the bottom, so that's why you see me contemplating what I want to do here. And the cutting, this is always the nerve-wracking part, especially with using scraps and limited fabric, so you don't really have a lot of error room. I am cutting an extra 2 front pieces because I realized the white linen might end up being a little bit sheer, so if I wear a bra, or I don't wear a bra, like I don't want to show anything that I wouldn't want people to see, so I figure I'll layer up the front pieces and then the back can just be a single piece. And the final thing to cut is what will be the front ties, which I essentially eyeball because it's not that serious. They're just long rectangles. So I decided for this gathered piece that I want it to essentially be 3 panels. And now you see all my pieces. Gathered bit, front ties, sleeves, front pieces, back piece. I read that to iron linen, it's good to do it with wetting a cotton, like, sort of towel And so I just used a kitchen towel, and it did work out pretty well. I'm not trying to be perfect with this ironing. I just don't want to find out that one piece was so much more wrinkled than another that they're not the same size. I always underestimate how much ironing there is to do when sewing things. Usually I skip it, but sometimes that backfires. So I am using off-white thread because I don't have enough white thread to do a basting stitch. I want to make sure that these front pieces will fit me properly. So 2 front pieces, and then I'll pin it to the back. Yeah, pins pointing away from my body because I'm going to put this on and I've stuck myself far too many times. So you see the left, I am just fitting it, and the right, I'm trying to see how I want the V to look. And then, because linen wrinkles so easily, I can just sew along the crease I made for both front pieces. And yep, cut along the edge. Ba-ba-dum. And I flip it inside out, and that's when I realize, oh, I only needed to sew one part of this closed. So I get the seam ripper, undo what I did on the armhole side. Is seam ripping the bane of our existence or what? Then I want to iron this front crease because this is important since I'm going to be using red thread as sort of like a decorative slash holding it together element. Also, look how well it ironed without the towel, so I feel like maybe what I read on the internet was a scam. Now I'm sewing the front ties. I've done a lot of this tutorial out of a logical order because it's the way that I was figuring things out as I went along. So I sewed it, flipped this inside out, and then I pinned it a little bit because I wanted to make sure when I ironed it, it wasn't askew. Because you can see like it doesn't quite totally add, it doesn't totally have like a nice finish on the side, but since I'm also going to be adding decorative thread there, don't want it to look too crazy. I'm opening up about 1 inch in the front pieces so that I can insert the front ties. And then I remember, oh yeah, decorative thread, let's go. So do it for both, and then you can insert them into the front pieces where they belong. And I sewed the front panels, but I didn't show it on camera, and went to the back to do like the inside collar with a double fold. I'm trying to make sure to hide all the seams on this linen top because I read that linen frays pretty easily, and I can see with just working with it that it does. So I figure if I hide the seams, it's a I think it's called the mock French seam is what I've done for most of the top. But for the collar in particular, if you double fold it, then the fray will be trapped inside. Now I'm sewing the front and back pieces together. And this mock French seam comes into play here. It's almost a mind game or like a brain buster to remember which way to start out to get the seam facing the right direction. And I'm making sure it's not uncomfortable. And then I sew the inside. All right, pleasantly pleased that it's working. I want to make sure where I want the ruffled bit to start. And I got it caught on my arm piercings. So I'm just marking up, I think it's about 3.5 or 4 inches off the bottom. I gave myself a ton of seam allowance and air room that I didn't end up needing, which is good. So I'm just marking this because I'm going to cut it all off and start sewing the gathering stitch for that ruffle bit. And then I realized I probably should have hemmed the bottom of this first. So let me do that now. This is always a struggle for me, just trying to pull these without the thread snapping and also trying not to lose my patience. The strings are still in my arm piercing from earlier. And then just pin the ruffled bit to the bottom of the shirt. Make sure it's, oh boy, is it wrong sides? It's right sides together, I believe, and then you flip it after you sew it so that it's wrong sides together. Is that right? I told you it's a brain buster. Yeah, I think it's wrong sides together first, and then right sides together. Boy. What a struggle. Now I'm flipping it inside out and trying to push the seam kind of to be as normal as possible with the gathering because I don't want it to bunch when I'm reversing it. I guess that's enough of that. Onto the sleeves. Pinning just the bottom hem of the sleeve first. And then sew the sleeve together. You see, it confuses me because you have to do right side, then wrong side. No. Yes, right side, then wrong side. Wow. Unfortunately, it fits. Strength, sweet. Pinning the sleeve to the top. I didn't record myself sewing over the ruffle part a second time because I don't think that, I mean, you get it. This is me making sure that if I sew the sleeve this way and I flip the shirt out, is it still right? Sleeves are always the hardest thing. It's why I save it for last. It's not always the smartest idea, but it's nice to have most of a shirt done when you get to your weak spot. Then you flip the sleeve inside out also. Change the camera angle so you can see what I'm doing better. And then pin it. And then you'll sew over that so that the seam is safely tucked inside. And if you're like me, you're gonna stick yourself with a pin every time you sew something. It's just part of the battle. And it still fits. I dropped a pin on the floor, can't have that, don't want to step on it. And the final step, cutting all these threads. It's a bad habit of mine to wait until the very end to do this because then it's just like an endless chore. And in the instance of this shirt, one of the red threads is stuck inside the front layer. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. I have a bigger ruffle than the original, but it fits me well, which is always nice. And I like that I chose to use red as an accent thread. Thank you for watching. Hope this helped you if you're interested in making this type of top. And yeah, have a good day. See ya.